Good afternoon to one and all in the second day of the webinar series. Uh, I would just like to recap what has been done in the previous session. So, in the previous session, we initially started off with the concept of the methodology. So, what is a methodology? Methodology is nothing but it's a process of trying to find answers to certain research issues. So, the methodology or the systematic process that we follow. Now, in the research methodology, we first started off with the philosophy of research, where we looked into what is positivism and interpretivism. So, positivism is mainly associated with objective type of research, which has what is called as the quantitative aspect of research, whereas under interpretivism, we have the qualitative aspects of research and mainly which is subjective in nature. So, if we look into the positivism aspect of research, we will look into more of quantitative research, and if we look into the interpretivism, we will look into more of the qualitative type of research. Next, we also come to what is called as the inductive and the deductive approach to research. Inductive approach to research is moving from data, inductive research is moving from data to theory, and deductive research is moving from theory to data. So, this is the entire research process. So, when we look into the approaches to research, a researcher has to decide whether it is an inductive approach that he is going to follow or a deductive approach that he is going to follow. This is the second most important decision that has to be taken by a researcher. So, the next important aspect that a researcher must look into is what is the kind of research that a researcher will be doing. Whether the researcher is going to have the qualitative aspects of research or whether he is going to follow the quantitative methodology or the type of research. Now, in both cases, the research process almost remains the same. And what is most important for a researcher is that he should be able to conceptualize his entire research. That means to say, the idea, whatever is being abstract, the researcher must be able to put that abstract into concrete or something that is measurable. This is the important first step for a researcher, trying to conceptualize an idea and trying to see to that he is able to put that into measuring terms. This is what a researcher has to do. The second important thing that a researcher has to do is to try and identify what are the concepts, what are the dimensions, and what is the variables or the items for the research. So it's kind of trying to formulate a particular research problem and trying to identify what are the dimensions, what are the variables, and what are the constructs of the research. So, with this, a researcher must be able to understand what is the conceptual model on the basis of which the research will be conducted, and secondly, what will be the hypothesis and the research questions that will arise in the course of framing of this title. So once the theory is being noted. So, what is the theory? What is the theory behind? Theory is nothing but a set of interrelated definitions that are arranged in a logical order. So, a researcher should be able to identify the underlying theory between these concepts. What is the dimensions that he is going to use, and what are the variables. Now we will look into what is the research process. Now, in the research process, when we look into the research process, the first most important aspect of the research process is planning of the research. That means to say that most of the research aspects. At least now, if I take 100% to be my entire research process, at least a researcher must be able to dedicate 40% of his time in planning of his research. So, in planning of his research, a researcher must be able to formulate the title. He must be able to set his objectives or research questions. Then he must also be able to uh, build up a conceptual model, and he must try to see that a rough research plan also is being prepared, which will be a blueprint for the next research that is going to be conducted. The next stage is the review of literature. Again, I would like to emphasize on this point to state that for review of literature, it's very, very important to note that at every stage, review of literature is necessary for a researcher. Whether be it you start off with identifying the topic, you start off with identifying concepts and dimensions, you have to take the variables, whether it is for scale development or whether it is for report writing, analysis and interpretation. Especially when you're giving interpretations, it is very, very important to note that for a researcher, that while you're giving the interpretation, you can also give a kind of an evidence of previous review of literature to show that this interpretation, whatever has been given under this research, has also been supported by other researchers. This is the second important step in the research process. Then we also have what is called as formulation again of the hypothesis and the conceptual model, the research design, then data analysis and interpretation. Now, this is a very, very important aspect. It is the 40% of what exactly a researcher has to do. So when it comes to data and collection and interpretation, it is more to do with the implementation or the doing aspect of a research. And the last is report writing, that is summarizing. Now, summarizing basically under report writing is a collection of the entire research and putting it into a meaningful format. That is report writing. Again, report writing at least constitutes around 15% of your research time. So a lot of care and it should be a systematic writing. It should be very clear, understandable. It should have no ambiguity. So, very specific and focused on the research. That means to say, the entire focus should be on writing only about the research. So, this is something, report writing is something which we will take it at the end. So now let us come to what is planning of research. Now again, planning of research, the most important thing is selection of a research problem. Now where is that we are going to get this kind of a research problem? Usually people say that it is based on the flair of a researcher. So it's based on your flair. If you're interested in a topic like finance, you could take up finance aspects. If you're interested in banking, you can take up banking related aspects. If you're interested in marketing, you can take up aspects like consumer behavior, perception, e-marketing, and market research. So selection of the problem for research basically depends on what is the flair of the researcher and what is the current trending topic. So what is a burning issue of that particular time? But I'm not very particular about taking the burning issue of that particular time, because it so happens sometimes that at that particular point of time it may be a burning issue, but later on it might not be of much value. One very good example is in case of topics like reverse mortgage, reverse mentoring, organizational citizenship behavior. These were all concepts which were very burning in the initial part of the 2000s, but as and when the time passed, it lost its prominence. So as far as possible, a researcher must go in for concepts wherein you can have issues, practical issues in the day-to-day life, and maybe a researcher can discuss this with many experts and decide upon a research problem. So what topic you can take up depends on a thorough reading of a review of literature or books. It can also be through daily experience. Experts can be consulted, or it can be based on the intuition of the researcher. So this is how a problem, or this is the source of problem, so where the researcher can identify his research problems. Now, coming to what is research questions. Now, when a research topic is selected, the topic must be able to raise research questions. What are research questions? It's more or less like your objectives. That means to say, once you take up the topic, what are the questions that arise when that particular concept or topic is taken? Of course, the most important thing that a researcher has to note is mainly whether it is researchable. This is something that a researcher has to note, and whether the idea is something that is novel and original. This also is a question that a researcher should know. So, researchability of the particular topic and the originality of the topic. That means to say, it must not be repeated previously. Research that has already been done, you should not take up the topic again. Now, let us say, for example, in human resource management, you have a topic like employee engagement, which has been taken, and immense studies has been conducted. So the researcher again taking up employee engagement becomes another work which has been duplicated. So researcher must take up a topic which is mainly original in nature. Now, when we come to framing of research questions are very, very important, which must be focused and which must be very, very specific and clear. Now, let us take the example. I've given two examples. Usually, the first example is, how can attrition and absenteeism be prevented? Let us say we are doing a study on how attrition and absenteeism is going to affect productivity. So attrition and absenteeism, suppose I take them, and a question is posed: how can attrition and absenteeism be prevented? Now, this is something that is very unclear and very vague. So if the question should be framed in this way, like, what are the non-monetary benefits that reduce attrition and absenteeism in an organization? So something like this would be more specific and more focused to the title of the study. The second example, what I've taken is, has there been an increase in social media marketing in the last few years? Now, again, this is a very general question. As far as possible, try to make sure that research questions are very, very specific and are very focused. So we could use something like, to what extent has the use of technology increased social media marketing in the last 2 years? So this is what we can note. So what we can note here is, has there been, it's very specific, social media marketing, has there been an increase because of use of technology? So we are trying to measure more concrete variables rather than more abstract variables. So framing of research questions, once it is done, it becomes very, very easy for the researcher to frame the objectives. Now, this formulation of the selected problem, again, this has already been stated, that is how you develop a model. Now, once you develop a model, is titled, the second important thing is developing a conceptual model. Now, what do you mean by a conceptual model? Now, whatever theory has to be presented. The theory can be presented in two forms. One is in the form of statements, and the second one is in the form of a model. Now, if you are presenting the title to prove in the form of statements, then usually we formulate hypothesis. If we want to create a model and depict the topic, then it can be done through a conceptual model. So what is a conceptual model? It is nothing but a diagrammatic representation of all the constructs, the dimensions, as well as the items of research. So this is a conceptual model. Our conceptual model also helps in identifying the hypothesis, where you will be showing whether there is a significant relationship, difference between the variables, or there is a relationship or association between the variables. So one title when you are developing, please remember that automatically you should be able to prepare a conceptual model. Simultaneously, you should be able to make certain research questions arise and define certain objectives based on your research questions, formulate the hypothesis, and give operational definition of concepts. Now, when we are defining concepts, there are two concepts that can be defined. One is called as your conceptual definition, and the second is your operational definition. Now, what do we mean by operational definitions? Now, operational definitions are usually given for that particular that particular research. Now, what happens when we are giving operational definition of concepts? We usually give a particular concept. Now, say for example, I'm taking human resource practices, the effect of human resource practices on employee well-being, taking mediators as, let us say, spirituality or organizational learning capabilities as our concepts. So when I'm taking concepts, now I'm having four concepts. One is called as human resource practices, again, which can have different dimensions. The second important thing is my employee well-being, which I can take as the dependent variable, which is based on the human resource practices. I can also take mediators like organizational learning capabilities, or I can take spirituality. So each one is a concept. Now, let us go into what is the operational definition of concepts. Now, let us continue with what is operational definition of concepts. Now, operational definition of concepts is the quantification of a nominal definition. That means to say that it's a definition in terms of specific measuring or testing criteria or operations of that particular research. So, if I'm saying employee well-being, what does employee well-being mean in this particular research or this particular study of ours? The definition should be given in that sense, not in the general sense of what is employee well-being. This is called as operational definition of concept. So each concept or each construct taken, the researcher has to give operational definition of those particular constructs or dimensions. Now, next we come to what are all the contents of a research plan. Now, what do we mean by a research plan? A research plan is nothing but a kind of a blueprint that is prepared. Most of you would have called it as a synopsis of the study, where you will be giving a kind of design which shows how the researcher is going to take this entire research till the end. So for that, what are all the important contents of a research plan or a research design? The first important thing that has to be included is the title of the study. Now, title of the study, as I told you, it must be a broad title, and all titles must definitely be based only on constructs. Now, let us say, for example, a study of consumer behavior, a comparison of consumer behavior with respect to, let us say, fast moving consumer goods in urban and rural areas. So this can be conducted as a study. This is a very broad aspect of the study. Now, again, I told you the role of human resource practices in employee well-being. Human resource practices is a construct, employee well-being is a construct. So taking these two constructs, title has to be formulated. Especially when you're doing a PhD research, it is very important for a doctoral research to take constructs. Of course, if you are doing papers, if you are doing research dissertations for, let us say, masters or bachelors, at that time you can take certain specific aspects. Now, let us say, for example, investor perception towards mutual funds. Now, you don't have concepts here. So you can kind of minimize the level of the study by taking only variables for a particular study. But definitely when you are taking a doctoral research, it's very important for you to have broad concepts, and those concepts where there is sufficient theory, especially when you're doing quantitative research. Now, the second important thing is your statement of the problem. Now, what does the statement of the problem include? Statement of the problem includes the why aspect of every research. That means to say, why this research is being conducted. So, what is the reason for conducting this research? And if this research is conducted, you can also add in the significance or the importance of the study, where you can say how it has got practical implications. So it's very important that in the statement of the problem, you kind of give a history about the particular issue and say why this aspect has been taken. Now, in the previous session, I also told about the research gap. It's very important that in theory, you identify the gaps in knowledge. Now, these gaps in knowledge should act as the titles for future research. So, research gap is nothing but the gap in knowledge which has to be stated in the research plan. The next important aspect is the review of literature. Now, literature survey relating to the topic must be included in the research plan. This is something that is very important for a researcher while presenting the research plan. You can in every paper that is published, either let us say if it is a conceptual papers, propositions are given on the basis of which it helps future research that has to be conducted. There are some researches where scale developments are made, and the researcher can use those scales for further testifying the data when it comes to his particular research. A researcher can also take up papers where he can see what are the areas for future research, and if those have not been covered in previous researches or in previous papers, those particular topics can be taken up as a research topic. So all these aspects can be given in the research plan. That is, if the researcher has resorted to these means, so of review of literature, then he can definitely write down all those research papers from which he has taken up this particular concept or idea. When it comes to the objectives of the study, it is very important for a researcher to note that the research questions that arise from the title of the study help in framing objectives of the study. Now, objectives of the study are nothing but the aspects that can be measured. Now, when it comes to the title of the study may have ideas or concepts which are more abstract in nature. Now, let us take consumer behavior. It's a very, very abstract concept. Now, these concepts have to be made measurable. So if I take something like consumer behavior, I can measure it through attitude, I can measure it through personality, I can measure it through various other aspects which are quantifiable. So that should be mentioned in the objectives. So objectives necessarily tell you what are the various measurable aspects of a particular title. Next is the scope of the study. Scope of the study will include usually the geographical limitation of that particular study. So, if you're doing a study in a particular city, let us say a Bangalore city, or you're doing it under Bangalore urban, Bangalore rural, Hyderabad urban, Hyderabad rural. So, where is that you're doing? Now, let us say, for example, you're taking up a study on human resource practices influencing employee well-being, so you cannot do it for the entire country like India. So you let us say you take up only the textile industry, or you can take up only the automobile industry, or you can take up entire Hyderabad as your particular area of study. So it's very important for a researcher to mention the scope of the study, that is where or which area has been taken for the study, or what are the industries that have been considered. So more specific as to where the study has been conducted. Next, of course, we have conceptual model, hypothesis, and operational definitions. Now these are very, very important when it comes to planning of research. That is, in the plan itself, while forming the title, it's very important for us to build a conceptual model, frame hypothesis for the study. Now let us say, for example, there is a relationship between human resource practices and employee well-being. This can be my working hypothesis. So based on this working hypothesis, I can also formulate sub hypothesis based on the various dimensions of each and every construct. So a working hypothesis is definitely needed. The next important thing is methodology of the research. Now methodology of the research will give us what is the type of research and what are the sources of data. So whether we have taken the data from primary sources, or we have taken the data from secondary sources. What is the total population frame, whether ours is a finite population or an infinite population? What is the sample size that has been taken? Who are my category of respondents, whether they are managers, they are executives, they are workers, they are CEOs, students, teachers? What is my category of respondents? Plan of analysis includes what are the statistical tools and techniques that have been adopted in order to conduct the quantitative study. So this is something very important, very important when it comes to a quantitative study. Limitations of the study is nothing but the time limitations, the economy, the financial resources, limitation of financial resources. All these have the time frame. All these can be mentioned under limitations. That means to say, let us say the sample size was very small, so where you were able to take the sample. So all that is a limitation that has to be mentioned in the research. Then how is that you're going to put your chapters? That is the chapter scheme. Now, one item that I've left out here is the sampling technique. This is something that is very, very important for a researcher in order to reduce sampling errors. So mainly there are two types of sampling. One is called as the probability sampling, and the second one is called as a non-probability sampling. Now, what do we mean by probability sampling? Probability sampling is something where the entire every element of the population has an equal chance of being selected, whereas non-probability sampling is where that is the entire population does not have an equal representation in the population. So this is a major difference between probability and non-probability sampling. Of course, when you're doing a quantitative research, especially if you want a normal distribution, it's very important that a researcher takes up probability sampling. So what is simple random sampling? Of course, simple random sampling is usually used for homogeneous population. It's a very small population, a homogeneous population, where you have, let us say, for example, students in class 5, students in class 6. It's a homogeneous population, a small population. Suppose it's a very large population. Let us say I'm studying the automobile industry, I'm studying the textile industry, I'm studying the oil and natural gas industry. I'm studying the service industry like hospitality, healthcare, banking, finance, BPO. I'm studying various industries. So this becomes large heterogeneous population for which I cannot use simple random sampling. In such a case, it's very important for us to use stratified random sampling. Systematic random sampling is something where you have fixed intervals. So let us say, for example, if I have a total of 300 respondents and I have to pick about 20 respondents, so I divide 300 by 20. So if I divide 300 by 20, I get 15. So every 15th element of that entire series, I will take it as my sample. Of course, not many researchers, have this systematic random sampling method. Usually, researchers adopt to stratified random sampling or cluster sampling, especially when the population is scattered over a wide area and you have to use a multi-stage sampling. That means to say sampling is carried out in 2 or more stages. This is something that is very, very important for a researcher. Sometimes it so happens that sampling cannot happen at one stage. You have to have 2 or more stages. Now, let us take in case of area sampling. Suppose you have selected 50 areas. Now, in those 50 areas, again, that is a sample. Now, in those 50 areas, you cannot choose all the houses in that 50 areas. So, again, you might choose every alternate street. And in that, again, after you've identified the streets, when you are identifying the houses, again, you might have a particular way of selecting the houses. So this is in case of cluster sampling. Multi-stages stage sampling is also carried out under area sampling. Now, when it comes to sampling with proportionate probability proportionate to size, here what happens is, uh, when we use area sampling, it so depends upon the area of sampling. So under the area, some areas might be small and some areas might be large. So it is important for a researcher to select samples based on the size of the particular area. This is called as sampling with probability proportionate to size. Next, we also come to multi-phase sampling. Now, what do we mean by multi-phase sampling? Now, multi-phase sampling multi-phase sampling is also called as double phase or two-phase sampling. Again, this refers to the subsection of the final sample from a pre-selected larger sample. So, this helps in providing information for improving the final selection. So, let us say, for example, if I want to study the consumer behavior relating to television, what I can do is first I can, collect from a larger sample of households, who have television, and again an additional set of data I can again collect from those who have color TVs. So in multi-phase sampling, usually the generous sample should be very large enough to yield adequate subsamples for a detailed investigation. Now, this is called as double sampling or multi-phase sampling. The last one for probability sampling is called as replicated sampling. It's also called as interpenetrating sampling. Now, what do we mean by interpenetrating sampling? It involves a selection of certain number of subsamples rather than one full sample from a population. So what it does is, it's like, you use one basic sampling technique like simple random sampling or stratified random sampling, again a multi-stage sampling or a multi-phase sampling. So different sampling techniques are used. Now this is called as replicated or interpenetrated sampling technique. Now, when it comes to non-probability sampling technique, again, it does not give a proper representation. That is, equal chance of the population being selected is not there. So we can have convenience sampling or accidental sampling where, whomever I meet. Now, let us say we go to a mall, we want to find out what is the consumer behavior or consumer perception towards a particular lipstick. So I just go and whomever I find on in the mall, I just keep collecting. So that is called as accidental sampling. Now judgmental sampling is where there is a certain requirement of the respondent. Only then I can use them as my respondents. Now let us say, for example, I'm doing a study on the health hazards faced by cardiologists in the city of Bangalore. Now, because my respondents are cardiologists, I have to be very choosy. I cannot have anybody and everybody as my respondents. So my target, since my target respondent is cardiologist, it's very important for me to select a set of cardiologists. A quota sampling again is used for to measure the social status, the gender, the caste, the class. Usually, quota sampling is used for those kind of researches that has to be conducted. Now, the last important thing is snowball sampling. Now, when do we use snowball sampling? Now, let us say I'll take the same example of cardiologists for my study. I might not know all the cardiologists who stay in Bangalore. So what do? I go to one particular cardiologist, or I currently know two cardiologists. So from those two cardiologists, after collecting data from them, I again take from them the data relating to another two or four cardiologists. From these four cardiologists, I again get the data of another 10 to 15 cardiologists. So this is called as a snowball technique, where we keep moving. We do not know the sample size, so we just keep moving from respondents to respondents collecting data. Now, choosing the right criteria for sample, again, it depends on various criteria. Now, based on the criteria of your research, it is important to select which technique has to be used. It's always better to consult a statistician as to which technique has to be used, because ultimately, it should be easy for data collection. Now, what I've done at the end is I've tried to give you a list of what are the various concepts that are there in marketing, in HRM, in banking, in accounting and finance, and in what are the various consequences. That is a list of antecedents and a list of consequence. So from my side, I've tried to cover certain important constructs or titles on the basis of which we could conduct researches. So you can use them as the basis for conducting research. So tomorrow what we will do is we will again look into a detailed aspect of review of literature and what are the various types of review of literature. And then we will go into pilot studies and test of reliability and validity. So thank you one and all for a patience hearing. And tomorrow again, we will move to the third session of our webinar series on research methodology. Thank you.